when you basically go to cloud, the cloud introduces a lot more challenges. Like if you see the CSA top threats, like I can share my LinkedIn document on this. Like there is a document from the Cloud Security Alliance which they have released this year also. Like normally they release it 2 years almost. So that document can definitely help you with this team. Like we have multiple threats. These are the top 11 threats you have in the cloud security architecture or cloud computing in 2024. See this. And the most important thing is misconfiguration and inadequate change control. Let me give you one more point, team, just to add to the stuff. Let me give you one more point here. When you basically go to a cloud platform, okay, lack of proper skills, the first thing is basically lack of proper skills is a major challenge. Like how lesser number of skills they are having, lack of proper skills and lack of proper strategy is a very important problem, which is part of this. Okay, like that. Now let's talk about the Google part of it. See, Google is there for a long time. Google Cloud is there for a long time. Okay, so like the same way, when you basically go for AWS or Azure, etc., like there are multiple vendors are there in the market. Like the same way, Google Cloud is a top provider. So Google Cloud was launched on 2008. As per my knowledge, Google Cloud was launched on 2008, and it was more of a developer-specific platform. Like at that time, they launched with a tool called as App Engine. But later on, the Google Cloud become a strong, market leader actually. If you see the top cloud computing platforms in the market now, you will see AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud as the in the first three places. Why? Because the solutions they are offering is that much flexible and efficient. And one more thing which can you can have for liking Google Cloud is that, team, when you basically go for Google Cloud, the APIs which is used by Google Cloud is more of open source APIs or open APIs. Like Google Cloud is marketed as itself as the open cloud platform. That means almost every APIs they are using is available for customizations and all. That's one benefit is there. And second thing is that Google is a AI driven cloud because they are providing AI in many forms. In fact, there's a lot of solutions depend on AI in Google. Okay, like that. Fine, team. So when talking about Google architecture, okay, when talking about the Google Cloud architecture, team, the most important thing is that these are the five pillars of Google Cloud. Okay, these are the five pillars of the Google Cloud. Okay, five pillars. That means, I mean, not five actually. Yeah, five pillars actually. So that is operational excellence, security, privacy and compliance, reliability, cost optimization, and performance optimization. So these are the total five pillars which we have for the Google Cloud and all. Now, when talking about the Google architecture framework, what is this architecture framework from Google? Like, what do you mean by this? That means that when you are an organization who are basically planning to go to Google Cloud platform, like like my company is now planning to go to Google Cloud platform, one major point which we have to keep in mind is that how what all areas or what all aspects I have to focus. That is what they are mentioning here. Okay, what all areas or what all things we have to focus is what they are mentioning here. See, it provides recommendation. This particular document provides you recommendations for building a proper cloud platform. Like for example, what do you mean by operational excellence, team? Operational excellence means that they are talking about what are the best practices or what are the best ways you can efficiently deploy, operate, monitor, and manage your cloud workloads. Then, if you basically go for security and privacy and compliance, they talk about how to secure your data and applications on the cloud platform. If you basically go to reliability, they are focusing more on how to build a proper resilient infra on the cloud platform, how to get the most out of the cloud with a cheaper cost, how to get the maximum performance. Like this, they are giving you recommendations. Okay, when you say the word open source APIs or open APIs, not everything, but when you say open APIs, the thing is that it is available for people to add, contribute more, and customize. In fact, that brings more benefits than bringing challenges. Okay, so what happens that, like, Google, let's say for example, there is an open source API available. So my company, or let's say Google, is taking that API and they are customizing it for their particular requirement. They are building it. So what is the benefit there? It's more easy to integrate. Like when we have some further integrations we want to do, if you want to develop more applications and all the stuff like that, that brings more flexibility and convenience to us. Okay, like that. It's not about being free, it's about being open source, like that. Fine, team. So here we are trying to focus more on the security and privacy and compliance. This is basically going to be our primary focus on what we are going to discuss further. Okay, security, privacy and compliance. So team, when talking about the word called as security, privacy and compliance, okay, so that's a very important point, team. The first point is that, team, this particular pillar is the one which will help if you are a Google Cloud architect, or if you are a person who is operating the services on Google Cloud platform. This particular pillar help you to secure or ensure that the security and compliance of your products you are having in the Google Cloud platform. And on this particular thing, team, there are some key points we have to understand. Okay, so Google is already giving you some multiple approaches for that, team. The first approach or the first point which they are giving is what we call as a build a layered security approach. So team, what do you mean by build a layered security approach? This is the basic design principle of a security, which we call it as defense in depth approach. So we are putting multi-layered control. So for any control which directly addresses the threat, there is another layer of control to catch the failure of the first one. Okay, so I'll tell you one more time. For any control which directly addresses the threat, there should be a compensatory control or backup control to catch the failure of the first one. Like for example, let's say we have a firewall. If the firewall fails, we can have web application firewall or IDS, IPS system, etc. We have a DLP. If the DLP is in the backend, we should have a DRM or IRM, like that. So that is a primary design principle Google always recommends. When you basically talk about the security in Google Cloud Platform, team, that's a primary security design principle Google always recommend. You should use a defense in depth strategy for implementing security for your data, applications, and the infrastructure at every level. Like in terms of identity access management, in terms of network security, in terms of monitoring, in terms of change management, for all these things, they are recommending you to have a multi-layered security approach or multi-layered security architecture. That is basically the first thing. These are the security principles that Google recommends. Build a secure layered security approach. The next thing is that, team, design for secure decoupled systems. Okay, that word that can be a bit confusing. So I'll give you a simple way of understanding it. See, instead of making your architecture more and more complex, which in turn makes the further changes or in further management complex, try to simplify your entire security and system architecture. Instead of making a massive complex thing which makes things even more worse, it's always a recommend thing to make sure that, team, you simplify your system architecture to make it more flexible. That's what they call, like for example, when we are building an application architecture, you should basically more of a decouple things, like okay, we have web server here and it should be protected in these ways. We have a DB server here and it should be protected in these ways, like that. Then the next is a most important security principle, which is called as automating your deployment of sensitive tasks. That means that, team, when you basically go to a cloud platform, when talking about security, okay, automation is a key point, or that's a word which comes directly as a part of security. Let me give an example for that. Now, for example, assume that I have a I'm currently handling, let's say, a SIM tool. Okay, a SIM tool. So what happens, the team? The SIM tool is basically giving me an alert. Okay, the SIM tool is basically giving me an alert. So what happens is that by the time I see the alert is there is alert is basically there, or there is a threat is basically there, and by the time you identify the threat and fix it manually, you go to that and fix it manually, the attacker could have done enough damage to us. As you are automating certain activities and making a proper workflow there, these activities happen in a more rhythmic, orchestrated way, so that the security can be more efficient and the attack can be reduced, or attack or impact can be reduced. But the next is that we have something called as a automated security monitoring. Again, like the same way that you are building the tools, or the same way you are implementing controls, the same way you are basically having everything, you should also make sure that, team, you should have a detect, you should have a visibility. Like I'll give an example, team. Now, like this is a common point which I always say when somebody asks me, Krish, what is the best practices for identity and access management? I will say that okay, you have to use a multi-factor authentication, you have to use a strong password, you have to basically give a principle of least privilege. Like there are some multiple things I or everyone tells you, right? But like the same way you have all these things, one major thing you're having is what is a monitoring and alerting. Why monitoring and alerting is a very important thing? Because until unless you have a visibility on what is happening, like for example, let's say you see that there is a user who is trying to access things which he is not supposed to access. So I have a basic user who is not supposed to access certain particular services, but he keeps on trying to access that. Like the same way, normally this user is logging in from India, but I see that the login request for that user is coming from a different country at that time. Like this, or like for example, we have a server there, so that for the particular server, that the peak traffic will be from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. I see that there is a massive amount of traffic coming in an odd time. Like this, you should basically view for anomalies. You should have a continuous monitoring, logging, and alerting. These are very, very important activities. Then meet the compliance requirements for regions. See, whenever you are handling data, okay, like for example, let's say team, when you're handling a data which is sensitive data, I will say, like it can be PII, PHI, whatever it is, any kind of sensitive data, you should make sure that you store the data with the proper level of controls and security. Even if you go to cloud platform, like for example, let's say team, I am currently, let's say I have to comply with the PCI DSS. Okay, assume that I have to comply with the PCI DSS, or assume that I have to comply with the GDPR, or assume that I have to comply with the HIPAA or FISMA, whatever it is. In any of these cases, I want to make sure as per the requirements, I should make sure that I have a proper clarity regarding where should the data reside, where it should reside. Okay. Which laws are applicable? Where should the data reside? Which laws or regulations are applicable? What level of controls we should have for securing the data? What, how long we have to keep the data? Like this, all these factors we have to keep in mind when moving your data to a cloud platform, especially if it's sensitive data. And the last but not least thing is called as shift left architecture. What is shift left team? Now normally what happens that this is something which you most people have faced in your past experience. Actually, whenever you go to a cloud platform like Google Cloud Platform or any cloud platform or even on premise also, your company's primary focus will be on just building the infrastructure and deploying things, and security is a bonus, or we can say security is an add-on. Yeah, Krish, it's good if I can have some security, that's all. Like for example, let's say I am hosting an application on a cloud platform, or I am hosting an application on the on premises, so it is good if I can have some security, that's all. But what happens team, at a point where you have a data compromise happen, or at a point where you are facing some serious challenge, at that time what we can do team, that brings us in trouble. That's the reason why we have to understand that security is not something which is an add-on, or security is not something which should be done only after implementation and doing something, but it should be something which is done immediately initially itself. Okay, it is not something which we have to do after everything is implemented, but we should do it initially on the earlier phases. While we are planning itself, security should be an integral part of the design of a cloud architecture, right team? See, the whole thing work like this. You have to, before we basically go to a cloud platform or simply talk about security, we have to properly identify and do a detailed risk assessment of your organization. Like I'm planning to make a separate webinar on this, on how to perform a practical step-by-step risk assessment in real time. But primarily team, it is the most important thing to make sure that we do a practical risk assessment. We do a real risk assessment to understand the risk of my organization, and put the proper controls, like whether it's technical controls, legal agreements, whatever it is, but you should basically put the proper controls to mitigate the threat. Also there is one more thing which I want to always say is that team, have a proper visibility. Like for example, you are having hundreds of servers in the cloud platform, multiple storage devices, multiple databases. You have a lot of things in the cloud platform. But what if I don't have a visibility? What if I don't have a cloud inventory is there? Like I'll give an example, team. If I basically go to Google Cloud Platform, I have a very beautiful tool called as its name is called as Cloud Asset Inventory, I guess. See, there is a tool called as Asset Inventory. So this tool is it's a really beautiful tool. Okay, like this. So these kind of tools help me to identify and understand a real-time information about the current status of your resources with a even with a I guess five weeks history. They will provide me with a 5 week history also. So I can basically get a complete visibility or snapshot across my entire organization architecture, my different projects in my company, what resources I'm using, and everything. So I have a complete visibility there. So that is a very important thing, team. Like the same way you talk about the word called as risk assessment, also you should basically have a proper thorough asset inventory, which basically help you to make sure that these are things we have in the cloud platform, and these should be configured like this. And if there is any changes happen, it should be notified for you like that.